What's up? You back at the cloud and watch this? Yeah, let's see. Back up here. Can you tell me something before we go? What we're gonna see?
We the people are not going to take it anymore. You are not going to take away our trucking there. You are not going to take away our votes and our freedom that our men died for. This is 1776, and we will never give up. We will never let our country go to the vote list. George Soros, you can go to hell.
Last chance. Who wants to make history with me? Who's a man? Who's a patriot? I'm going into Capitol Hill by myself. Who wants to back me the fuck up? Patriots, let's do this right fucking now.
Well, there you go. You can see John by that one provocateur. I call him Vice Gerbach. Vice Gerbach. Vice Gerbach is white tanner. That's white canvas. That's hide or canvas. That's a white canvas production. Vice Gerbach. Now, interesting thing about Martin Vice Gerbach is that his father is Jacques Vice Gerbach, and he makes films for NATO. And not only does he make films for NATO, it's a company called Horizon Film Productions. But he made Vietnam, a television history. He loves flags. He loves flags. Now his son loves gas masks. And you see his son there. The other one he did is a complete history of the films of Louis Malle. And I thought Louis Malle kind of made cinema verite, so I didn't know how the war films and cinema verite went together. But you see, I'm sorry, John, you didn't do your opening there. I went right from the cold open into this. But anyway, this Mr. Weisgerber is a very interesting guy because his dad makes propaganda war films, and he just happens to be a Bernie bro in 2016, and yet he's the only one now. He's swung over to the Trump side. He's the only one brave enough now. He says, I'm going the F in. Who's with me? We're going to go through the window. So an obvious provocateur, agent provocateur here. We just find more and more every day.
Well, George, as you say, we jumped right into the content, and I think that was appropriate. We've been preparing this. Andy's been there getting everything lined up, and I jumped in at the last minute, and it is 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning. It's time for McDuff and Webb. So everybody already knows, George, that this is McDuff and Webb at the McDuff Lives channel on YouTube. And welcome, everyone. If you're new here, George Webb, I'm going to say veteran on the street news reporter and journalist and author, joins me every Saturday morning whenever it's at all possible for a discussion of the day's and week's news. So, I mean, Monday morning.
Yeah.
It's Monday morning, George.
But I do join you on
because
Saturday.
It's a holiday and I got a little confused.
Well, I never join you on Monday, but that's why you thought it was Saturday.
We do. I was thinking, is this a Saturday morning? It must be because George is here.
Exactly.
All right. Well, it shows you that George is willing to come over here in a very important news week, a very important week for the country. So apologize for the fouling up the day there, George, but thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's great to be here again, John. And while we're running the charrette, we still have the house full of folks over there. We're going to run all the way through the inauguration through to the 22nd. We're going to keep covering the story every day. We get to pick this White Canvas production apart. We did not know that it would be White Canvas Productions. If you're not familiar with White Canvas Productions, they're the ones who did Libya. They do these stories. They drop WikiLeaks right before an invasion. These are the psychological ops guys. Very much like Canvas, who does the color revolutions in Belgrade in Europe for NATO. This is the American version, which is the White Canvas. And you can see, and if you go to my Twitter, where we are for the initial charge of the orange hats, you'll see this kind of sea of flags, and it very reminiscent. I don't know if Louis Malle did the, if you go to my Twitter, and not just my replies, my tweets, you'll see all this sea of flags, and it's very reminiscent of the movie Tale of Two Cities, where you had all the flags going in when the bridge at the Bastille fell, and there's a lot of pageantry. If you go down a little bit, Andrew, you get it. There's a lot of pageantry that you'll see in the. There's you working, John. Look at how many hits of people interested in you working on your book. But there's one of the guys right there, John Earl Sullivan. His brother's a Proud Boy. They're both inside filming this guy. They're both inside filming Ashley Babbitt get shot, right? And what does the Wall Street Journal come out and say today? There you go. There's the flag shot. I call that the flag shot.
And here we are, a couple of days.
And you can just see there's a lot of visual here. You can see that whoever set this up and practiced this and rehearsed it, really was concentrating on the cinematography. I just thought that was interesting because the days go by, people are saying, hey, this is the Reichstag thing. It's becoming more and more obvious exactly what happened, which I really like that. They get the initial shock wave done because it hits everybody quickly, but now it just, even before the inauguration, there's only a small group of people that don't think this is a psyop.
I was looking a little bit into the history of the military units that are involved here. Apparently inside the perimeter is the 10th Mountain Division Army, and then outside the perimeter is the 29th Division. And a lot of people have reported on the history of the 10th Mountain Division, and you particularly pointed out its connection to General David Petraeus. The 29th Division has a very interesting history, and it's one of the most storied and respected and cherished names in the Army is the 29th Division. I won't try to recount the important engagements, including Operation Overlord and so many other points where these soldiers put their lives on the line, and many lost them. So it's interesting to note that the 29th Division was actually stood down for quite a few years, but it was reactivated at some point in the 80s, and I don't remember the time. But since then, its deployments seem to be Kosovo, KFOR, the Bosnia, and kind of a peacekeeping military unit, if I may just venture a characterization of their service since they were reconstituted in the 80s, serving in Bosnia and particularly at Kosovo, which involves, then you get to Camp Bondsteel and a lot of allegations that are very unsavory. They are local in the sense that they're kind of constituted of troops from Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Delaware, and in other words, central around the Washington D.C. area. So it's interesting. The ones in the inside have, of course, a history that maybe George wants to go through, but generally, I think it's fascinating to actually break down the stories behind these organizations, these divisions of American troops.
Yeah, I asked a couple of the guys. They have a symbol that looks like the yin and yang ball, literally. And it is like, as you were mixing, sort of like you're mixing paint, and it is sort of a mixture. I asked all the guys, and some were from on the street there were from Virginia, some were from Maryland, some were from Pennsylvania. But my thoughts go back to this Navy crew, this Navy Reserve crew, where you can pull from all 50 states if you're Navy for naval reserve. So I just wonder how many of the guys in the 4th PSYOPs that got attached to this operation were Navy Reserve. I did see some Navy there. But, you know, in Kosovo, we had such a, I mean, I've been talking about that one for 4 years with the Blackberries and General Shelton and General Petraeus. And I've been talking about, you know, Madeleine Albright and, you know, Camp Bondsteel and the whole story there. And it just seems to be the same use of military forces to subdue a civilian population, sometimes in combination with a psychological operation, sometimes just bomb or shoot. You know, my dad was an Army veteran as well, Bougainville, Guadalcanal, all that sort of thing, New Georgia. So I have a tremendous respect of people who go to combat, but Petraeus kind of turned the corner with this and said, hey, civilians are a legitimate target here. And the bombing of Sarajevo, we have people who are very close to that. I've interviewed people who were there during the bombing, and it was civilians. So it wasn't the Serbs out in the country. So this is this KFOR here. These people were the ones that were given by OSCE the encrypted Blackberries in 1999. So this is the start of it all, and you just wonder: was this the last of the hurrah for the Blackberries? That UKE, you know, if you put an F in front of that, that's what their motto was, and that's the patch of KFOR, and that goes right back to our friend with Popovic in Serbia. You know, John, I guess, you know, we did everything we could. The job of intelligence officers is to let the folks know on your side exactly who's going to attack, when they're going to attack, where they're going to attack. And we got it all right. 4 years down the track, we got it all right. Sometimes you don't have enough defense. Sometimes you're not prepared. And that's just the way it goes. I mean, but that doesn't mean you give up after you lose the battle. We lost this psychological operation, but that doesn't mean we don't regain ground and go get some of that ground that we lost using, again, our great research. The good news is we were right. We were right about the orange hats. We were right about the 4th spec psychops. We were right about what groups would be coming in. We were right about it being a false flag. So at this point, we just have to keep unwinding their PSYOP and keep showing people that it was a PSYOP, keep showing them it was a sort of a burning of the Reichstag. And that's the only way we're going to get the middle to swing over to us and say, this is a fake coronation. This is a fake election. This is all fake. It's all fake.
The reporter John Solomon did, I think, a good service yesterday or the day before. That he did a report, and you can see it, John Solomon, a report in which he clearly said that the first barricade break, the first rush toward the Capitol, happened while President Trump was still speaking. And that the president went on to speak for 20 minutes after that. And therefore, it's impossible to blame this on President Trump, who was completely unaware of the events at the Capitol as he was speaking down in the mall. That report by a very well-respected mainstream reporter, I think, is a wedge that may be opening a door for more people than those of us that kind of already see through this false flag operation.
Yeah, absolutely, John. I've met John Solomon before, and he's a good man. And John, Andy, if you go to my Twitter, you'll just see eyewitness account after eyewitness account of people who hadn't made it to the gates yet. And when they got to the gates were already down. They had come from the Trump speech, and it was already all knocked down, and they didn't know what the situation was. They gingerly walked over the barricades, kind of, looking to see what was going on. But you'll see eyewitness account after eyewitness account if you just scroll through my Twitter. And these are these are people who've sworn. These are sworn testimonies, so we can back up John's reporting here. And I saw where the orange hats, the sort of the false flag orange hats formed up, and they did not come from the Capitol Mall. They came from behind the OAN building. You go down, Andy, just a little bit, and just scroll down, you'll just see, one testimony after another of these folks who said we weren't even close to the Capitol. We were a long way away. So if you're looking for 1 minute or 2 minute testimonies, they're there, or they're right there in my feed. As you go down through the feed, you'll see Janet there. She said she was about 15 minutes away behind the crowd. If you keep scrolling, you'll just see person after person say that we were nowhere near. And this group here that they're trying to say the Proud Boys with the orange hats was not even on that side of the Capitol. I don't believe they hadn't made it down there to the Capitol, unless they may have left a little bit early, maybe 10 minutes early, but there was still this 10-minute gap. There was hardly anybody there at the gates when I got down there.
Hey, wait a minute. That text says a group of Proud Boys is staging on the east side of the Capitol, along with hundreds of Trump supporters. I thought, this is Washington Post report. Yep. So we have to, I think, just as happens to me, when you see something that Proud Boys, and orange hats, then it's tempting to think, oh, those orange hats are Proud Boys. And I wanted to get that straight. This is, George, who are the orange hat guys in your opinion?
Well, I think they're two bike gangs from Fayetteville, North Carolina, and two bike gangs for Fort Drum, New York. These guys are no longer in military service, most of them, and they've moved into psych ops. And sometimes they're called in to be Proud Boys, sometimes they're called in to be Antifa, depending on what the situation requires. Mm-hmm. And so this crew, though, that I saw, and that's not the crew, was mostly prisoner type, prison gang looking. I'm talking neck tats, all kinds of hardware piercings in there. This is a stage shot here of guys that look like Trump supporters, but the ones I saw were right out of bike gang type stuff. And again, the Washington Post is a part of this. They're only gonna publish what they get fed. That's how the Post works. But I picture them, right. It's not those same guys. There's another gal who that I interviewed that was with Trump. And she says the same thing that John Solomon just reported, where we were still standing there listening to Trump. And then we had provocateurs running through, come on, what are we still doing here? All that, and like, well, we're listening to the president. That's what we're doing here. So they were trying to get people to leak out. So, yeah.
I want to say once again, George, how valuable it is to have these testimonials that you've recorded. But let's think about it now that you maybe have got maybe 10, 20, even 30 or 40 or 50, but there was 2 million people there.
Right.
And they need to do something to record their observations. I'm talking to everybody that was there, no matter where you were, to record it, to just write down what you saw, put your name, some way to get in touch with you, and get it notarized so that we have proof of the date of your statement. 50 or 100 statements is not necessarily going to prove anything, but 10,000 statements, 50,000 statements, 100,000 statements, you can't ignore. So if there's anything that you can do that is simple, that doesn't cost you anything, do that. Write an affidavit, get it notarized, and then let somebody know where to find it if needed. That is something you can do for your country right now.
Andy, if you go to my Twitter feed, you had Emily Rainey up there, and she's the fourth psych ops officer. I think she's a captain who openly says she recruited 100 people from Fayetteville. There's no hiding this. So where's that story gone? Where's the Washington Post interviewing her? You know, why don't we have those 100 names? The reason why we don't have those 100 names, and the ones we went through in the very short list the other day of 40, most of them turned out to be either some kind of role player, but a lot of Antifa. The one we just saw was a Bernie bro. So you have this kind of mixture, and this is what's so tough for people who aren't used to, you know, deconstructing psyops. Is they're saying, you mean there's a bus, and the buses come into Charlottesville, and then they have two sets of shirts, and they say you're a white supremacist today, and you're a BLM protester today. Come on, man, that can't be true. Yeah, it is true. We have people that actually saw people coming off the bus, and depending on how the person looks, will give them the shirt that goes along with the desired psyop. And we just have to call it what it is, and just have a whole bunch of people say this is no longer conspiracy theory. You finally have the Washington Post now, almost 2 years later, or two weeks later, finally saying it was the Proud Boys, because they don't want people drilling down. And here's this woman, here's Emily Rainey here, very beautiful young woman, 30 years old, 4th Special Operations. And she's saying, I need you, you know, strong men out there to go to Washington and slay the dragon and protect us all, you know. And it's almost like patriot porn. I mean, it gets close to soft porn, where she starts saying, you know, she'll enjoy, you know, vitriolically and vicariously this, you know, charge of the Light Brigade into the Capitol. When you deconstruct all this, you're going to find that these 50 people, these 50 Antifa guys, or wherever Spec Ops got, or Psych Ops got these guys, went into a tunnel. I saw them go into, there's a little tunnel on the mall side of the Capitol. It's kind of like the old kind of carriage entrance, but it's like a 1 or 2 man tunnel. Anyway, all 50 people go into that tunnel. And I think that's the guys that were to go get the server. The other guys fanned out and then started taking the Trump flags and punching out windows. And that was what everybody was looking at. But you were not looking at what happened to those 50 guys that went through that wall. And that's where I think they got the servers. Remember the part of the Capitol they're in the speaker's lobby there? You have DHS right there. You have the Sergeant of Arms right there, where my BlackBerry came from. You have CIA there, and you have FBI there. That's the thing that's supposed to withstand nuclear attack, right? You know, so yeah, and you can see one guy with a gas mask turned around on his face with a bullhorn is not going to get through and get the server. Not going to happen.
Do we have any audio from said 4th Psych Ops, Emily Rainey? I bet she has a kind of a nice voice.
From that last
yeah.
video I was just playing?
Yeah, definitely play that. And you'll see how it's playing on, you know, a male's idea of masculinity, mixed in with patriotism, and you'll see this kind of underhanded method being used.
Give me 1 second. I gotta.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't sharing with the audio.
Come on, all you big strong men. Uncle Sam needs your help again. He got himself in a terrible jam way down yonder in Vietnam.
There you go.
Name is on there 3 times. I'm not afraid. It's darkest before the dawn, okay? And it always looks bleak. But I know you. And I know us. And I know what we stand for. And I'm not worried.
So there you have it. You know, these were the Lee Harvey Oswalds. These were the Patsies, I think. And then there was going to be others that came in that are the bike gangs, that are the two Fayetteville bike gangs. I'm not saying Hell's Angels, but this is how you do PSYOPs. You have a few people. I interviewed one of the guys. He was from West Virginia. He was a state senator in the Parkersburg area, and he went in with this crowd and was arrested. And his name was splashed all over. People said, you know, immediately to resign his seat, blah, blah, blah. And you have this tremendous, ferocious attack on the patsies. And then all the psyop guys just kind of melt away into the scenery after this thing's over.
George, I got a different question. People like AOC and others they're not apparently not all that happy with Biden in them either. And it looks like there's some of these violent types, the kind of ones that would do things up in Portland, for instance, that are now standing around in front of the Capitol by the fence there making speeches. I'm just still wondering if there isn't some type of maybe some kind of a battle being planned, that there would be some type of an assault on the Capitol that would, you know, be done by whoever, you know, in order to really be a Reichstag fire. And have you observed any indications that things might actually turn in that direction?
Yeah, I talked about this on Sunday with Paul Cottrell. I said, remember where the fusion centers are. Remember where JTTF has their fusion centers. It's in all 50 state capitals because that's where the state police is. But then it's in the 35 largest cities also. So you have about 85 fusion centers. Again, this is something we predicted for 3 years. You remember Doug Valentine's book about the Phoenix program. You take the provincial capitals. That's where you have your green zones. So you're going to go back to those places where you've already done priming for green zones, Minneapolis, Portland, Seattle. And you're going to make it seem like it's an organic thing being asked for and requested. Plus it allows you then to move your Antifa folks and your BLM folks down the line to the different dominoes as you take them. You want to make it look like all 85 happened and made their decisions, each one organically. You want to false flag each one of those in different ways. You can't be obvious about it, but then you want that green zone. The green zone gives you an enterprise zone. Now I can start buying property for $1. I can get trillions of dollars in terms of relief from COVID to build whatever commercial building I want. I'm talking about Kolomoisky in Columbus, Wexner in Columbus, Kolomoisky in Cleveland. Kolomoisky will be the #1 builder, but Wexner also in these new zones, in these new green zones. Washington is your national model where we're going to get used to. You can't go into the Capitol Mile, the square mile, until you have a vaccine, until you have a chip maybe, or something where it's a controlled zone. And then everything else, God help you. I mean, Kolomoisky.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Has also sprayed a lot of folks in a lot of different countries. Remember, this is much cleaner. A bioweapon is much cleaner than what they had to do in Ukraine. Ukraine, you have to bring in a bunch of Norwegian snipers and Swedish snipers, people that Carl Bildt brought into Kosovo, and you got to shoot people on both sides. It's messy. When you can just do a storm the gate and then knock down. And again, remember what's happening in DC. There's the cataracts. It's going out further and further every day, bigger and bigger hardware coming in every day, more and more weapons, higher caliber weapons. Now they're starting to, put the clips in their hand. Pretty soon the clips will go in the weapon. That's where this is heading. It's going to be 85, not just DC. And it follows the Phoenix plan, lockstep. This is 85 fusion centers. So all the state capitals first. That's why you had the false flag that white supremacists are going to attack all the capitals. So you're going to get a loose perimeter around 50 capitals. And then you're going to have other places that aren't capitals, like Portland's not the capital of Oregon, that you also want because you want that real estate. Seattle's going to be another one. Minneapolis is another one. So, I mean, we just have to kind of grin and bear it. I mean, again, we can talk about it. We can let people know what the plan is, but we have to work a little bit more diligently and a little harder, if that's possible, to at least slow them down.
Right. It's horrifying. This is not an inauguration. This is an occupation.
Yeah.
This is like an occupation of a foreign city, but it's our city, and the people that are occupying it are doing so not for the American people, but for the powers that be, described in many, many ways. And I think I'll risk it. I'll say that there are people who I respect, George, who would put the name of the brutish umpire upon the deep state, that to unscramble what I just said would probably be the best place to look. And I think Harley Schlanger is on the right track with that.
I don't know the British umpire.
Oh, it's a joke.
Oh, okay.
The son never, it's about the little boy that goes to play baseball, and his father is the umpire. And, after the game, the kids, little kids, right? They would all get a chance to go and talk to the umpire, maybe while he's, sitting on his chair. He'd put him on his lap, and tell him they were good ball players and everything. But he would never do that for his own child. And that proves the old saying, the son never sits on the brutish umpire.
Oh, okay. I understand. Well, in this case, I think the British, where the umpire was, I guess, the FBI. And
I'm going with your friends at MI6
and their friends,
the PP dossier and all that. But I'm not the expert. I didn't want to leave out the idea of this very strong connection between whatever's going on here and the desires of the British oligarchs.
Oh yeah,
It's time to reset
I think
your rest.
it lays. This is a Rhodesian sort of coup,
Right? There you go.
And I definitely would agree with you that look at all the people that are involved in this thing. They're all wannabe, people that waltz around the floors of Oxford, on the tartan floor there to angle their way toward a handshake with a queen. So I would totally agree with you in that assessment. This is going to be something like an occupation that we're going to have to figure out how to resist without getting killed. How to resist without, being, smeared or labeled more than we already are,
or sent to a re-education camp. For God's sake,
Yeah.
She's talking about re-education camps, reprogramming. She used the word reprogramming of white supremacists and conspiracy theorists. Okay, what is reprogramming? You know what that is.
Yeah. Well, I guess, you're going to have to reprogram our civics courses when we were in 7th grade, 8th grade about the 3 branches of government. We're not talking about any conspiracy here. Everything we're talking about that happened in these green zones and outside these green zones, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, in Libya, Yemen, Sudan, all these different places, Somalia, happened. The DOD didn't minister out justice. They didn't rebuild anything. They took the rebuilding money and built hotels for themselves. So this idea that somehow the DOD is going to be this new arbiter of what's right and wrong and how to think is right out of 1984. I saw 1984 now, John, is the 2nd bestseller on Amazon. It made this whole coup, this whole occupation has made 1984 a bestseller again. And it is a timeless classic. And she is the minister of truth. I saw an article there saying she's the minister of truth. Everything that she says is false, you know, and
You want to play this video? real
sure,
quick?
sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
Let me share the audio.
But I don't think that I think this is by design that she's disagreeing with Pelosi so they can do full spectrum dominance, so they can cover both sides of the Democratic left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Discussion, let's see, any discussion in Congress about federal truth and reconciliation or media literacy initiatives to help with healing? I definitely, so there, I can't say, I don't think that the response, that this kind of like medium term response has fully crystallized yet. But what I can say is that there's absolutely a commission that's being discussed, but it seems to be more investigatory in style rather than truth and reconciliation. And so I think that's an interesting concept for us to explore. And, you know, I do think that several members of Congress in some of my discussions have brought up media literacy because that is a part of what happened here. And we're going to have to figure out how we rein in our media environment so that you can't just spew disinformation and misinformation. It's one thing to have differing opinions, but it's another thing entirely to just say things that are false. And so that's something that we're looking into.
Yeah. And Senator Warren, there's a couple that says, you know, they cite me, 60 Minutes and CNN tend to cite me a lot in this discussion, saying I'm the reason why the 230 needs to be turned on the American people. And and I've written a book about it. It got banned, so they didn't let me respond. And I've rewritten the book, and the first 4 chapters are out on my Patreon. And I go through and start with the premise that they don't mention, which is to say that the Chinese foreign ministry said that the American athletes brought coronavirus to Wuhan. That's their official statement. So I'll just leave it at that. But who's in a better position to, let's say we had Rocky Mountain spotted fever breakout in the Rocky Mountains, and there was a whole bunch of athletes that came into Colorado Springs, and Mike Pompeo got up and said the Chinese athletes brought this to the United States. Well, you would, if you're a reporter, you would run over to the State Department and ask for a follow-up. You know, hey, where's your evidence and so forth? And they would say, well, we have 10,000 people on the ground. We know what's happening in Colorado Springs better than the people in China, right? But that's where you would start with the story. They won't even say that's the beginning of this story, given to me by a White House reporter, right? They won't even touch that. They just say, I made it up. I made it up, right? It wasn't the Chinese foreign ministry that said it. It was this conspiracy theorist. So, you know, by how you choose to leave out facts, you can make someone look like they just made it up. And I didn't. The Chinese foreign ministry.
Zhao Lihan.
Xiao Lijian, a spokesman for Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, called attention to a comment on Wednesday from Robert Redfield, the director of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, acknowledging that some Americans who were said to have died from influenza may have actually died from COVID-19. Oops, I just said it. I'm quoting from Business Insider here, Mr. Automated Intelligence Robot. So please don't crash me just because I said that. Please, I'm begging you, Mr. Automated Intelligence. When did patient 0 begin in the U.S.? How many people are infected? Zhao wrote on Twitter. What are the names of the hospitals? Well, anyway, I would add one other element to what is said, and that is that the caption of that article on Business Insider, which is a publication, I don't know whether it's to what extent it's politicized, but it does say up at the top that it is a conspiracy theory promulgated by the Chinese. So they've already labeled the whole theory as a conspiracy theory. Maybe, that is the lever that they use to say to attack you with, although certainly they don't make any type of a case to prove that it's a conspiracy theory.
Well, and I'm just saying here, 60 Minutes just recently, a week ago or 2 weeks ago, did a hit piece on me, saying that I'm the reason why they need this committee, and I'm the reason why they need to revoke 230 to limit speech, not 230 to guarantee speech, right?
So the committee that she's talking about, AOC is talking about,
is to limit free speech and have a committee to decide what free speech is. So this is the Ministry of Truth, right? That's what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is, who is in a better position to determine the outbreak of coronavirus in China? The people who have 10,000 people and are dealing with the health situation every day on the ground? Or there was 2 people sent by the World Health Organization at the end of the year, and they didn't ever get to Wuhan. They stayed for 1 day in a hotel. They never talked. They just looked at reports. So the United States is saying these are officials that are saying this is a conspiracy theory, right? And then reporters are repeating that. These experts, these 2 guys in the hotel, they know so much that we can quote them, and that means anything that the 2 guys in the hotel say and put out on their fax machine is truth, right? That's what they're saying. That's our version of the truth. And I'm quoting the Chinese Foreign Ministry that has access to tens of thousands of health professionals, right? Tens of thousands, and they have been dealing with it since August of 2019. Now, I did make a mistake because I didn't have the information that the breakout occurred in August of 2019. I hypothesized that patient 0 among that group would have been in October. But later, when I found out the breakout with the Harvard study was actually in August, I printed a retraction. So that retraction's out there on my Patreon. So but it wasn't because I erred because coronavirus occurred later. It actually occurred earlier, meaning the Chinese had even more time to figure it out. Then I discredited the Chinese and said the Chinese were attributing something that happened up the Yangtze River in August to these athletes. And that's what made it a conspiracy theory, because I had evidence from the Harvard study that showed that the Chinese were placing the blame falsely on the American athletes. But the American athletes, this is now a raging pandemic by the time the NATO games start. They could have easily gotten it. We did have a whole bunch of people at Fort Belvoir get sick. The Canadian plane, when it came back, 1/3 of the people were in the back quarantined. There's all sorts of different people at the games that got sick. So it's not necessarily a conspiracy theory. People get sick with unknown pneumonias. It could be that those were early cases of coronavirus.
Oh, George, you know where the headquarters of the 29th Infantry Division is, right?
Fort Belvoir.
That's right.
Yeah, and see, I love the U.S. military. I love my dad. Was, like I said, an Army vet. I just don't like these psyops. That's not protecting your country. That's fooling your country. And whether you call it Smith-Mundt or whatever label you slap on it, it's lying. It's what it is. And so if AOC wants me to go to the re-education camp, then, okay, so be it. I mean, if that's but I'm not going to start lying just to make AOC happy. That's just something you can't. That's something like a McDuff. Would McDuff go, well, we're going to have to look the other way on this Kennedy thing? I don't think so.
And that's why we're here today.
Yeah.
Because there are McDuffs everywhere in our country and around the world that have that inner sense of conscience and know that the world can't survive unless we adopt a golden rule morality. This idea of take whatever you can during this lifetime, implies that there's nothing else. There's nothing left after your body is underground. And if you live that way, that it's all about, how many toys you can get or how many people of the opposite sex you can do whatever with, or, exploiting other people as a sport, which seems to be a theme in some of our motion pictures, in a lot of our culture now, is exploitation as opposed to empathy, is using other people to achieve something like a George Soros, where he would take an entire nation's economy and do some short selling trick that just devastates the value of their homes, and call themselves a hero for doing it because they've amassed all this wealth that, for their point of view, is actually going to be used better than it would have been by all of those useless eaters in their houses all over that country.
Yeah, I guess useless eaters would be all those folks going to the Fort Belvoir Community Hospital. That's a military hospital. That's their hospital of all these guys that are going to be at the Capitol. And, there was an outbreak. The commandant even shut the place down a long time ago. And there was a major BSL-4 lab event in August of 2019. There's just no two ways about it. And that wasn't the Wuhan lab. It was a lab called Fort Detrick. And I brought a person to the event who said that they did virus vaccine testing at Bethesda Naval Hospital, which is the old Walter Reed. And I had two doctors tell me that they did testing, a virus vaccine testing, bioagent testing, they called it, but it's a bioweapon if you turn up the pathogenicity at Fort Belvoir. And there was this unknown breakout that occurred in August. So in both Detrick, Maryland, Fort Detrick, Maryland, and also in Fort Belvoir. So you have to start looking at why wouldn't if you're trying to stop a worldwide pandemic, and remember, you got to wind the clock back here to February, maybe January, when the story originally came out. I didn't even report on it till March, mid-March. Wouldn't you want to help the Chinese foreign minister? Wouldn't you want to give the athletes records, health records, to get to the bottom of it, to either disprove or prove the allegation? Wouldn't the easiest thing have been to just put out the health records of the people? Why wouldn't you want to help the Chinese government get to the bottom of it? Right?
Well, perhaps your name is Secretary Pompeo, and you don't want to do anything that might help the Chinese. On the contrary, you might want to instigate something that could possibly use up some of the inventory of your sponsors in the major arms industries. Well,
I guess be careful what you wish for when you let a pandemic run wild. And I mean, here we're talking about, and Andy, can you read what you're saying, talking about there?
The first conspiracy claim was that soldiers who trained near Fort Detrick brought the disease with them during the World Military Games in October. But that is not true, according to the DoD.
It's not true according to the DoD, but they're the ones doing this virus vaccine testing. And if you look at this whole history, and I write about this in the book that I'm going to re-release, but it's on my Patreon right now. I put the whole book out there. I haven't rewritten the chapters 5 through 12.
You did something to the name of the book, right?
Yeah, it's somewhere under the lockdown now, rather than somewhere under the rainbow, because people thought that was too provocative. Operation Rainbow was spraying the Vietnamese population with a whole rainbow of different agents, including Agent Orange, the whole rainbow of colors. So that was too provocative. So So I said, okay, somewhere under the lockdown because it's causing the lockdown. But this is not conspiracy theory. Robert Redfield, the reason why Li Jian, the foreign minister, tweeted it out was Redfield was saying, we got it wrong. There was all these cases in August in Maryland and in Virginia that we got it wrong. And it's some unknown pneumonia. And I'm, you know, this 60 Minutes guy's going to sue me. I said, bring it on, because the two doctors will come forward. So bring it on. We'll get the whole thing out in front of all the American people that there was bioagent testing. We brought a person here who had been given a virus in Fort Bethesda and a vaccine, and he had been to Fort Detrick. Okay, and we have like 12 witnesses of that. So this wasn't speculation. This is a program. And if we are at fault, we should be the people that are leading the solution, not blaming China. Now, I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm saying that we had a program, a gain of function program, starting in 2013 with the Wuhan lab, with several of our universities. And in the coming and going of this virus back and forth between China and the United States, with these couriers taking it back and forth, when something is in motion with these couriers is when you have the greatest chance of an intercept, or someone intercepting it and copying the virus, etc. That's a lot of distance to be going back and forth between these laboratories with these couriers. That's when it's most vulnerable, was when the couriers have the pathogens, the blood pathogens, the bucket.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to a correspondent of ours in Sweden named Johan. He's sent some very interesting leads to us, and so way to go, Johan. And so many other people are helping out. I would like to let everyone know that on Brighteon, you can now find me, yours truly, reading JFK, a subscriber of mine whose name she doesn't want used was kind enough to arrange the publication of, I think, all of the chapters that I read of the JFK by Fletcher Prouty. So we'll be attaching that to our Screaming Ospreys as a resource for people that want to hear the JFK. And of all the books on my book train, that is number one. That is the key. Secret Team, his earlier book, I agree with it, also very, very key. But to get up to speed quickly, read or listen to me read JFK by L. Fletcher Prouty. And thank you, anonymous subscriber, for performing that service. It's all with my permission, and I think we need to do everything we can to spread the truth as long as we have the power and the ability to do so.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, John, because we just watched our group of 12 or so, or 15, I think, when we got the two houses together and watched JFK. And people wanted me to stop the VCR and explain the connections to McDuff at various points along the way. And if you're watching the JFK movie, and I don't know exactly what gets cut out of the book, and I haven't done the comparison to the Oliver Stone film enough, but the key things that I tell people to focus on is the Jack Lemmon character, the guy who works with Guy Bannister, who finds the files of all the anti-Cuban guys that they're recruiting, all the students that they're recruiting out of Miami. That's really important because that's where the Bay of Pigs guys are recruited, and that's where the second Bay of Pigs guys are recruited. And that's why Guy Bannister pistol whips the guy. Okay, that's a really important thing, because at first he doesn't crack, and then he cracks and says, David Ferry, we got this training camp up at Pontchartrain. There we go. You're going to play the trailer.
You want to watch the trailer?
Sure. That's an important scene. And then there's another one with Kevin Bacon, who plays the guy who was.
Who you scared of, Dave? Me? I'm afraid of everybody. Agency, mob Cubans. You just talk to us on the record. We'll protect you. I guarantee it.
It was a day that changed our lives.
I saw a flash of light in the bushes, and that last shot.
An act that shocked the nation.
The smoke came from behind the hedge.
A moment when time stood still.
It seemed like people weren't even breathing, like you were looking at a picture.
For one man, it became an obsession with truth.
You're the DA in New Orleans. Don't you think the Kennedy assassination is a little bit out of your domain?
A commitment to justice.
Nobody's gonna tell me that kid did the shooting job he did from that damn bookstore.
A sacrifice of everything he had.
I think you care more about John Kennedy than your own family.
For everything he believed.
Nothing is going to keep me from going ahead with my investigation of John Kennedy's murder.
They tried to stop him from asking who.
If I give you the name of the big enchilada, you know.
Do I have to spell it out for you, Mr. Garrison?
Then it's Bon Voyage Dino.
They tried to keep him from asking why.
That's the real question, isn't it? Why?
The government's gonna jump all over your head, Jimbo.
Why was Kennedy killed?
I was saying people are killing us, Pop.
Nobody's going to kill us.
Who benefited?
You have any idea what you're getting yourself into, Daddy-O?
Who has the power to cover it up?
Warner Brothers presents Kevin Costner.
Now we're through the looking glass here, people.
In an Oliver Stone film.
White is black, and black is white.
People got to know. I'm a dead man!
I say let justice be done, though the heavens fall.
And I'll just finish this really quickly. But if you want to know Jim Garrison, who's Kevin Costner plays, his theory was that the FBI had inserted a informant into David Ferry's group there at Guy Bannister's office. And the second scene that I think is very important for people to watch is David Ferry saying, they got all of our C4, they got all of our explosives, they got all of our weapons, they got all of our guns. And he's going nuts. He's reacting to the FBI raid at the training base. So somebody who has been inserted into the group has tipped the FBI off, and that's when the FBI does the raid. Now, who is that guy? Well, the Kevin Bacon character says it's Lee Harvey Oswald. That's Jim Garrison. And what I hate about the film is he doesn't portray the theory, the legal theory of Jim Garrison appropriately, because Jim Garrison had knowledge from the FBI of what actually happened with that training camp and Oswald's role. And nothing holds together unless you have that link pin, that connective tissue. But then the next question is, who is that FBI agent that inserted that guy in there to break up the Bay of Pigs?
George, thanks so much for illustrating with the trailer from JFK by Oliver Stone, a lot of what you've been studying and the background of your writing. We're going to have to wrap the show up at this point. It's already a little bit afternoon. Before I do, I want to thank Andy and George for being here, and also to let everybody know that there's a special show tonight at 8 p.m. with none other than Bill Taylor of Deep State Analytics. He's been writing some amazing articles connecting more and more of the dots behind the scenes from Gibson Island, the Symingtons, and the arms industry. It's a fascinating journey for me to read his writing. Bill Taylor writing at dstateanalytics.com. So tonight at 8 o'clock. And well, everyone, I hope you all have a very nice afternoon. It's always a pleasure to have George Webb here, whether a Saturday or a Monday.
There you go. Thank you, John.